Hello, everyone. It's Melina and
Jordan.
And we're back again. The board certified BAes.
Yes, we are. The BAes. And we're back with Seamus.
Hey, that's me.
So cool and smooth.
We should have had you like walk in and do like the applause.
Yeah, just like
Yeah.
and then shake hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, it's great to be back. Funny
Different
anecdote.
outfit.
Funny
Yeah.
anecdote. Yeah, I'll just go change my shirt.
There you go.
Yeah. We've done that. I don't know about not the applause track, though.
No, not yet. Not
No,
yet. Just wait.
Don't think we can. But here we are again, episode 3 of our mini-series. And loving it all. Hopefully everyone else is too.
I'm having a good time.
I'm glad. That's the most important part. Hopefully this all feels genuine and you feel that you can be your authentic self.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. So let's dive in again. And let's ask you this to start this one. Can you tell us about some key experiences that have shaped your understanding of being neurodivergent? It's a big question.
For sure. I know in the last 2 episodes I touched some points already. So I would say a big start for me was when I got my actual diagnosis at 5. That was definitely the predecessor to my deeper understanding of it until around 2nd, 3rd grade when I was told that I'm autistic without knowing fully what that meant for me. But it definitely gave me a title, so to speak, or a label that after that point, it started becoming more and more and more obvious. So around early elementary to middle school, those were the really big areas where, because I would go to those psychiatry appointments and everything, and I was told a little bit more about autism in a general sense, but also in what I was exhibiting, traits and symptoms wise. It's a real big key event too. After in 5th grade when that kid caught me stimming, and then I didn't outwardly stim pretty much ever again, at least in a more outstanding sense. I was about middle school, and that's when I really started going into like deep mask mode, like we talked about last episode. That was really the beginning of my feeling, it's kind of embarrassing to admit, but almost ashamed of who I was. I felt that even though this was not objectively true, but I felt pretty much like the only person who was like me in that sense, which ended up, in retrospect, not being true. I've discovered as an adult that a few of the people I went to this K through 8 small school, same class, 32, 36 kids. It was, there was a few others that actually had similar, that were neurodivergent, just didn't find out till later. So in retrospect, it was good to know that I wasn't truly alone. But those first the 2 years of middle school that 7th, 8th grade, I don't know if 6th grade is middle school. Do they count that as middle school anymore? I don't know.
I think so. 7th, 8th grade.
Regardless, though, that was a huge moment in my life that I was so hyper aware of my own autism that I did the not recommended route and just hyper masked. And it allowed me to blend in better than I ever could, because once you get into high school, especially my freshman year of high school, where I only knew one person going into that school, I literally could start over. And that first year of high school, I only went to that school for 1 year. I basically could be whoever I wanted to be, even though I was the poorest kid that went to that school, very rich school, where it did not grow up rich at all. But nevertheless, that's where I got to hone all of those like masking skills, if you want to call them that. And that shaped a lot of my, like my identity by, after I left that school and went to the school I finished at for high school. That allowed me to start being a little bit more myself without still coming out as autistic, if you want to call it that. But I developed a lot of friends through that way without telling them I'm autistic, but also not having to cover up who I was. It was a lot more open-minded of a group of kids, believe it or not. Being at a Catholic high school of all things too, it really helped me become more comfortable with myself. Mm-hmm. So that way, after high school, I was immediately more like, I'm just going to tell everybody, I don't care. This is who I am. When I discovered the neurodivergent movement, then that helped me feel like, yeah, this is something I can be proud of. And, I've had success when I started telling people who didn't know. They were like, oh, cool, thanks for telling me. Like, I didn't think you were. Like, well, I am, and I don't think it really changes anything. They go, nope. And when I saw more acceptance through being open about that, that's when I was able to, like, that was actually right around the time too that I started going into ABA, and I was able to tell like people I worked with, like, I'm autistic. I'm autistic. I used to joke about pulling the autism card sometimes.
Yeah, you did.
Obviously, kind of like half joking, but it was like a way that like using my neurodivergence to get into to work with this population of people really made me feel more proud of my neurodivergence, and that was super formative. I think honestly, working in the jobs, I could all clump them together into one thing. It's being an ABA, being in residential supported living services, doing IEP advocacy, whatnot, working in the schools. I think that all to me is a one big combined key moment of my adulthood, because this is 95% of what I did as an adult work-wise is working with this population, and that more secured my pride in who I am. So
Love that.
yeah, the neurodivergence community is strong and it's out there, and that also kind of really helped kick my butt to be more open and proud about it too. So
that's good. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Just to add on to that, what are some realizations or moments that have been particularly like empowering for you, right? Or even challenging?
I would say that in each of the jobs I've had, and just to stick more into my adulthood, there were times where just because I was very open and honest about it, I would tell a lot of parents I would tell. Not every parent needed to know it. It was a case-by-case thing. It's also my right to disclose whom, and I think I did it in a very, like, particular fashion. There were parents or guardians, each job I've had, where I was either the parent or guardian got scared that an autistic person was working with their autistic child. And I think fear is the best way I could describe it, because that's objectively what it is. You might call it something different, or that parent or guardian might, but it was either that, or I would have a parent completely tell me, you're not autistic. Like, no, you're not. And there would be the type of people who I would never think would be so opposed to the fact that anyone who doesn't act and appear like their child could be autistic or neurodivergent. And I don't blame the parent. I don't blame that too much. That's ignorance, and you're gonna get that. But that still has that still exists. That those moments left such terrible taste in my mouth, even if, you know, I don't consider it malice, but it's not great. I'm sure, you know, I'm sure you guys could in your own way relate. It's not great to be told that you aren't something that you are. And those moments, and I know there's been others like that, especially in non-work, that, you know, I think because of my masking and because of how well I can articulate that I don't fit into a specific box, or you know, I don't fit into a, you know, like a specific hole or idea of what people want to be when they think of autism or when they think of me. So that definitely, I know that's kind of in the negative, you know, in the negatives there, but that always stuck with me. But it also further like strengthened my, you know, sense of self too.
I mean, I don't think no outsider, right? And we've kind of touched on this before. No outsider can discredit or speak negatively about your experiences or speak for you, right? So that's where, you know, you being authentic and sharing these experiences is important, because there is only one you. There is only one you that's had this experience and gone through it this way. So nobody should be able to challenge or change your experiences to fit what they are expecting your experience to be like. You know, and you said, you know, ignorance on family's part is probably a big thing, right? You know, when you get so, and just from their point of view, right? Maybe they're just so stuck in where they are at that present time with their child that it's like made them blind to the idea of what that future might look like. That no, you can get through this and have a successful life. It's not this. It doesn't have to be this way all of the time. And you know, looking at that part of the image that they were expecting when they decided to have kids being like washed away.
For sure.
And hopefully I said that in a right way, because I feel like one of the mentors I had early on said that, right, is, you know, families, they sign up to have kids most of the time, right?
Yeah.
But not to sign up to go through understanding, you know, what it means to be autistic or neurodivergent.
Yeah.
Understanding how to go through the school system then with this way, or they didn't sign up to have all this extra stuff that they had to learn. It's kind of just how the cookie crumbled and what they got, right? Like they're doing the best with what they have. But that image of, you know, when you have kids is always like, yeah, we're going to be parents. And then you're like, this is what it is, you know, any of those memes that you look at where there's somebody running through the trenches or something, it says parenthood, you know. And then there's just an added aspect to it when you have to add so much to learn as well. And, you know, not all parents are going to get it right. But I think some of that might have had, and I don't want to speak for them, but maybe some of that had to do with that they were so focused on their part of the spectrum, because it is a spectrum, right? Like they were so stuck on their part of the spectrum that they were ignorant or blind to like the fact that it moves, it's big.
It's a lot of parents, if I've told them that I'm autistic, have most of them it's positive, but quite a bit of them have also said that, like, I don't know, kind of gives me hope. And then I kind of pause and I go, don't let me as an autistic person, just the fact that I'm autistic, give you any sort of particular expectation for your child. Your child is your child. I am my own person. I will likely never be able to do things that your child might be able to achieve, and vice versa. And it's okay to be like hopeful of like, oh my gosh, you're somebody that, you know, who has autism, and, you know, I'm hopeful that maybe you can help me understand a bit more about some general autism stuff that help my child. And that's kind of where I like to redirect. But, you know, sometimes the opposite is, it's just, I don't want an autistic person working with my child. And you know what?
But I have a little bit of another moment where I'm like, this might be random, but maybe not. I think too sometimes it's, I don't know if funny is the word, but it's interesting because I feel like sometimes too the parents that aren't accepting of it are parents that I'm like, did you ever go through the diagnosis process? Like, because, you know, like...
Let's look at the facts here. If you have an autistic child and it is, you know, your biological child, the likelihood of either or both of the parents being neurodivergent is very high. But...
Yeah. Well, for example, I had a kid that, non-vocal kiddo. And basically dad kind of was just like, well, we don't need this because I didn't start talking until I was like 4. And I was like, pause. Like,
yeah, hold on.
hold on. So just things like that where I'm like, I think part of it too is just like there's, I would say we're kind of like the generation that is more open to the conversation.
Oh, yeah.
But I would say those that are maybe like 10 years older than us or than more are one, like, could be like not accepting of it, right? Not accepting of the fact that this is the reality for a lot of individuals, right? But then I think there's another piece too where like there's almost ignorance in a lot of ways as well. Like I've also heard and I'm sure you've heard this as well, like, well, everyone's a little
I hate that.
Yeah.
You know, so I think there's a piece of like generational too where it's like just lack of understanding or lack of willingness to learn. So I think all of that kind of wraps into what you guys are also saying. So
absolutely.
Sidebar.
No, I think that sidebar could be a whole episode on its own. I know we've talked for hours. I think the last time that we talked about, you know, statements like that, I think we were on the phone for like 3 hours.
Yeah, we were.
Talking back,
got into it
because I just wanted to understand at that point, and maybe we'll do that for like a next episode in the series or something. I just wanted to understand, like, as a neurodivergent individual, how that impacted your view. And so we can circle back to that, unless you think you can summarize it.
What specifically again?
We're all just a little autistic. Or
yeah, I can summarize that. So
how does that impact
really quickly
the community?
The DSM-5, while very imperfect, is based on very specific criteria. Now, I won't get into the politics of that, but when everybody says they're a little bit autistic, that all I'm hearing is you identify with 1 or 2 neurodivergent traits that most human beings have some degree of. Everybody fidgets to some degree. Everybody can hyperfixate on something to some degree. Everybody can, you know, misread cues to some degree. You know, when you are only meeting a tiny, tiny handful of criteria and like with honest like self-reflection and saying that, oh, I'm autistic, it is not true. The autistic brain, or the neurodivergent brain too, is if you go and look on brain imaging, there is slight deviations and in differences in brain imaging, especially when processing has happened. When an autistic person is experiencing like heavy like sensory overload, that is because pretty much all of their synapses are firing. Most people, neurotypical folks, a lot of their synapses get shut off or die off. That doesn't happen with our brains. The reason why we have sensory overload to such degrees is because we're firing in literally all the synapses, and they're all unlocked, and they're all working, sometimes at full capacity. But besides that, there are just a lot of day-to-day things where if a neurotypical person that is very clearly neurotypical were to tell me we're all a little bit autistic, I go, I would like to challenge you and ask you my 20, 30 questions of, do you go through this? Oh, you don't go through most of those the way we do? I don't know. It's devalidating. It kind of also, it's reductive.
Yeah.
It's neurodivergent folks have so many traits that qualify them as neurodivergent, and we need to respect that. Otherwise, we could say everybody has a little cerebral palsy, everybody's black,
No.
everybody's queer. It's a spectrum. Some people aren't on it, and that's okay. Some people are on it. That's great too. But don't include yourself in circles that you know you are not a part of. But I'm going to end it there.
No,
I'm not going to go into more of a spiel.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. I feel like, like we've had that conversation.
We're not trying to gatekeep. We're just trying to be mindful of who gets...
They're like, you're not invited to the cookout. Just kidding.
Yeah. No, but I'm sure there are a lot of people that feel that it's a very difficult place for those that are being like, I'm a self-diagnosed so-and-so.
Yeah.
And it's not our place as, neurotypical individuals to be like, no, that's damaging to the society. It's not, I don't feel like it's my place to say that because I don't know what that means on the other end, right? I don't diagnose. I just don't think it's fair for me to stand up in that argument.
I do think self-diagnosis in many cases is valid because the process to getting diagnosed, especially if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, is a lot harder than someone who literally looks like me.
And can be expensive.
Yep. It is lengthy. So, but in most cases, there are people who say that to just... It's basically saying, autism's not real. That's what I hear. When I say, everybody's a little autistic, you're telling me, okay, you don't think autism's real. Whatever. Yeah. But there are people who are definitely meet the qualifications that can't get a diagnosis. I think self-diagnosis in a lot of cases is totally valid. But that's open to argument too.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Okay. So you kept that a whole lot briefer than when we had our conversation, so that's great. We're gonna run out of battery in here. Let's dive into the next question for the last few minutes. How has your neurodivergent identity influenced the way you approach relationships, personal, professional, educational, just relationships?
I think there's two camps I really put into, I think you even talked about the two camps, literally the inside of work and outside of work aspect. So when I'm in work mode, even if I'm not working with individuals who are, disabled or neurodivergent or anything like that, I still utilize I still utilize the fact that I'm an autistic person. But then again, I've really only worked in the fields where this population exists, and that's who I work with. But even I'm working with people who aren't autistic all the time. Like, when I don't think at first when I met you, I told you at all. I think it took a year or two, and then I'm just like, oh yeah. I think I said it really casually. And you're like, oh yeah. Your reaction, I remember, was just like, cool. Which was great. And even after, or I would say even during, our work relationship, we developed a relationship outside of work as, becoming really close friends. The group we would hang out with and everything. It was one of the first times to where I could really get a sense for what that looks like, both as in a professional relationship and a outside, personal relationship. And you all blended that so well, so perfectly together. You were the first real group of people, aside from one person who I'd known my whole life, and she's like, oh, yep, that's just Seamus. Which, much respect. But you guys really showed that respect for me, and I was able to kind of get a sense of like, you know what, it's really a sense of like, I can be both myself, or be myself in both professional and personal relationships without having to compromise very much. And I say very much because there's a few tiny things, but in a personal sense, you know, I don't always bring it up in conversation if I meet new people. It typically comes up naturally, especially in the field we work in. It's going to always come up. With personal relationship, I meet new people, which I don't know how I have a tendency to do and maintain relationships. Good for me, I guess. But it does come up randomly. And it's not as tough. I've developed such a good sense of who I am, and a prideful sense of who I am, that I'm kind of unashamed about it, and I don't care. And I think it's a good litmus test. I don't want to be around people that don't accept me for who I am, as we all do. But this is one of those things where I can typically tell if somebody is going to treat me differently if I give them some time before I tell them, and then I can see if they treat me differently. And I'll be honest, I would say like over 90% of the people I meet and then tell them later, it's been either like joyous or it's been neutral. I don't know what to give credit for that, but I think it's more showing them that I'm, you know, I'm just a person who happens to be autistic, and you didn't know any better. So now you kind of have a new understanding of what autism can be just by meeting me alone. But, you know, I could go on all day about that too. But neurodivergence in my relationships is still pretty front and center. But oftentimes when I don't have to worry about it, I forget about it, which is how it should be. Like, it should be as normal as me talking to you guys, which it has been. When I'm around people that know and I'm comfortable, it's like someone with Tourette's. A lot of people with Tourette's have less tics around people they're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And then they forget, I didn't even remember you had Tourette's until you brought it up. It's like that sometimes, at least in my experience. So,
no, I mean, I think that's important. I don't think at the time, or even till this point just now, that I knew that was the first like blending that you went through, mm-hmm. right? Of blending like those two. And I think I don't want to speak for everybody. In my eyes, I was just like, it's another dude just hanging out with us, going to the bar, and just enjoying
acting
life.
A fool all
getting into trouble.
Had to come pick y'all up all the time. I'm just kidding.
But I mean, at the time, even you saying that, it didn't change anything. And if anything, I'd say that out of coincidence, we ended up hanging out more after knowing that than we did probably before. Because I think that we all kind of developed that professional relationship first, and then it was like, you know what? Oh, then we got invited to go to a something from somebody else that worked there, and then that's when we kind of like, oh, we all have this experience to share together, and we're all like, common cool people, so let's do this more often. But yeah, I didn't realize at that time that it was that, but I appreciate the memories and the time that we've had, and now knowing that, I mean, I'm glad that I was a part of that experience for you. I think that was awesome.
It definitely helped me grow in a lot of ways. I think that self-esteem, that self-confidence was key, and you guys were a huge part of it. And then we could go to work, and when we were all case supervisors together, it was it was great. Yeah. Wow. And I look back at those days with nothing but fond memories.
Well, that's good. I appreciate that. So, I think that concludes our episode this time around, episode 3. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you again, Seamus, for dropping the knowledge and experience with us. We will see you on the next one.